I'm now delighted to be joined online by Daphne Maxwell Reid, who played the iconic character Vivian Banks in the smash hit TV iconic series Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I suppose, Daphne, we're speaking to you this evening, I suppose, really in an historic year for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, 30 years on, and I suppose still as popular as ever.
Yes, it is. We're on our third generation now. The grandchildren of the first audience are now watching the show. I think it's delightful.
Yeah, and I suppose, Daphne, 30 years on, you're all coming together again. Lord mercy, aside from James Avery, who's passed on. But to get all the cast back together after 30 years in terms of all the cast, what they've gone on to achieve in terms of stardom, in terms of other adventures and projects, and coming back to where it all started for most of them. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, obviously, it was a launching pad for Will Smith, but it launched so many careers, and I suppose so many fond memories come from that ensemble and cast. And I suppose even till today, you're still a very close-knit sort of family.
Yes, we are very close-knit. We see each other on many occasions. We've been through births and deaths and marriages and lots of wonderful things that individually we're doing, we support. And it was a joy, as always, getting everybody back in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, and I imagine, I suppose, Daphne, 30 years on, I suppose, Carlton and Hillary and Ashley, they're grown men and sort of grown women, so it must be very hard to sort of portray what you portrayed in the past. I suppose Ashley can't really portray a 13-year-old child anymore.
No, she's got 2 children of her own.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to portray those characters again. Mm-hmm. So it was a session. The show that we shot last week was for HBO Max, and it's to be aired around Thanksgiving in the U.S. I don't know what you celebrate in Ireland at that time, but it'll be around the end of November. And we just had told each other stories, some that the other people had never heard, and some secrets of behind the scenes of Fresh Prince, and lots of fun surprises. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah, I suppose, Daphne, I just want to take you back to the original series now, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, just for a moment. And I suppose your character, you replaced the original Vivian Banks. You came in midway through the series. And I suppose Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had probably already taken off at that stage. And how hard for you was it to sort of acclimatise and just fit straight in and play Philip's wife from the start? And do you always feel that you were coming in to try and play a different type of Vivian from the Vivian that was already there, that was perceived by Janet Hobart? Or did you want to carry along that character alongside similar lines? Or did you want to, what was your idea in terms of maybe freshening up that character?
I really had nothing to do with trying to be the other character. Mm-hmm. I was hired on the basis of who I was and the timbre that I had, the beat that I had, the way that I carried myself, and it was different. But we made the choice to not make a big deal out of it, and only discussed it. Well, it was only presented to the audience on my first episode, when Will kind of breaks the fourth wall and looks at the audience after Jazz says, "You look different after you've had that baby." And we just said, yes, it was different, and we moved on, and the audience seemed to move on with us.
Yeah, I suppose, Daphne, I maybe a bit now on the iconic Will Smith. I suppose in terms of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I know he played the main principal character, Will, and he was almost in nearly every scene of the show. But in terms of him being hands-on, in terms of its production, in terms of the writing, in terms of the script, in terms of bringing the cast altogether. It struck me that even doing a bit of research, his work rate was ferocious, that even if he wasn't involved in an actual line himself, that he was involved in nearly every aspect, every segment of the show to make it such a success. That Will Smith, he might be a talented actor and a funny guy, but as an actor, as a professional, they say his work rate is absolutely impeccable. It's ferocious the amount of work he takes on.
He is a ferocious person, and he is an extremely very talented businessman. And he knew that he had to learn everything about everything in order to make it all work, since his name was riding on the title of this. He learned a lot from James Avery. He learned a lot from Quincy Jones. He learned a lot while he was working. And by the time I got on the show, he was quite adept at doing the producing, the helping with the writing, which we all got to do. We had table reads on Monday morning, and there was the script, and then we had to comment on, well, would that person say that? How would we do that? We had input in making sure that it was culturally correct for what we wanted to portray. And we had the freedom to do that, and Will was very hands-on, but very smart in the way that he did his business.
And I suppose at that time, Daphne, there was two iconic sort of shows at that time in terms of an update, modern, African-American sort of a family. There was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with his comedy and humour, Will coming from a rough background, coming into this prosperous area such as Bel-Air, and then you had probably the Cosby Show as well that tried to play a modern sort of upbeat African-American sort of family as well. But I suppose in terms of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it sort of struck so many genders, audiences, because it appealed to the young audience in terms of its comedy, in terms of its wit and its sort of funny jokes. And then I suppose the older audience sort of saw characters that they could see in their own local communities, and I suppose the twist of having Jeffrey, a sophisticated sort of English butler, also with this sort of a family as well, it sort of gave it that sort of touch of class and sophistication as well to the whole thing. It sort of portrayed a sort of what's the word? A sophistication comedy.
Well, we had a variety of characters on that show, from Will coming from where he came from, as well as Jeffrey coming from London, and a family that had achieved what was then thought of as the American dream. And we were able to show so many different colors within that casting that I think it was brilliantly cast, and the writing was spot on for the time. I don't know that some of the things would be as funny now as they were, but some of them were quite universally iconic.
Yeah. And I suppose, Daphne, in terms of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the original show, I know it was a massive part of your life, but in terms of afterwards, did it springfold you into the sort of the US mainstream in terms of Hollywood and opportunity? Did it open up many doors for you and many avenues for your career? How was your career progressing before you came into the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
I came into the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with many, many network series on under my belt. I had starred in shows. I had been working for 20 years in Hollywood before I did Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They recognized my, background when they hired me, and they gave me a lot of respect for the work that I had done previously. And, of course, I just kept on working. After Fresh Prince, there were lots of things to do, as well as things outside of Hollywood with which I busy myself. I'm a designer and a photographer, and I write books and I stay busy, but I still do acting as well.
Yeah, and I suppose most of your character was seen on set with James Avery, and the relationship ye had, and sort of the banter that goes with a sort of married life as well. And I suppose James was probably being a dear close friend of yours yourselves. And I suppose in terms of this 30th year reunion, you're all there, sadly, except for James. And James Avery as an actor, I suppose, in terms of being on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and working beside him for so many years, what was he like as a person, as a normal guy? And I suppose then James Avery, the actor, as well. What sort of character was he?
He was an amazing man. I fell in love with him when I auditioned with him for the show. He was just warm and wonderful and brilliant and talented, and he was the rock of the show. People looked to him for guidance. Will did as well, as the young kids did as well. He was warm and giving. He loved to dance. He loved jazz. He read all the time. He shared his love of learning with the kids, and everybody bloomed from his guidance. And my husband and I and James's wife and I used to travel together. So we were very, very close, and it was a very sad occasion when we lost him.
Yeah, and I suppose Daphne, the whole cast and the location for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I mean, the Bel-Air mansion itself is iconic from the opening shot scene that we see, the big, massive sort of house. But in terms of filming, was it all done predominantly from that house and probably offset locations, or was it all sort of near enough to each other? And I suppose that sort of house itself, have you been back to it since the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? I know probably the 30th year anniversary. Was that your first time back in that house?
That was the first time I've ever seen that house. So, no, it was shot on a soundstage. The entire show was shot on a soundstage. And the opening credits were shot independently.
Okay.
So us getting to see where the original house was the first time for all of us.
Well,
and they've done a lovely couple of rooms in that house to replicate the pool house bedroom that Will stayed in on the show, and they did a great job. It's kind of cool, but we didn't shoot there.
You didn't shoot there. And I suppose throughout the years you had many, I suppose, guest star actors that would have come in, I suppose, for one or two episodes, from favourite musicians to basketball stars to American football stars to other sort of Hollywood greats and comedians, and they would have all made their sort of appearance at one stage, and many of them probably appeared on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air before they actually became famous themselves, and probably people can look back and say, oh, he guest starred, but that guy guest starred in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air back when he was starting out or something. So I suppose in terms of that, when someone new came on the set for an episode each time, how intriguing was that to work with sort of different sort of celebrities and basketball stars and movie stars and American football stars that would come and go for the special episodes?
Well, when you're in Hollywood, you come and go all the time, and you bump into these people in the street. So it was an honor to have them on the show. The only one that I can really speak to as being a newbie was the young man who played Little Nicky, the 5th year and the 6th year.
Yeah.
And he did very well. Showed up in Independence Day in the next season. So he grew, and it was good seeing him again. And he looked exactly like the little boy who came to set at age 8, except now he has a mustache and a goatee, and he's taller.
Yeah, And I suppose, Daphne, before we let you go, I suppose you mentioned this 30-year anniversary. It's coming out in Thanksgiving in the United States, and obviously it'll follow suit here in Ireland. So you said this show is about, in terms of speaking about memories and stories from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and unhidden stories. And what in terms of that, maybe I'm not asking you to give anything away as such, but what are we in store for here in Ireland when the episode does drop drop here in Ireland? What can we expect to see?
You can expect to see tears, laughter, and lots of surprises, as well as some clips, some trivia questions. Very, very much fun. That's what you can expect.
On that note, Daphne Maxwell Reid, who played the iconic character Vivian Banks and who has appeared in an awful lot of successful projects, films and movies throughout her illustrious acting career. Many thanks for coming on the air to us to talk this evening about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the 30th year anniversary. And please God, you'll be back to celebrate a 40-year anniversary in a decade's time to come, Daphne. Take care.
Excellent idea. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.
Enjoy your week.
Thank you.